Hello, dear viewers. Let's talk about Avenging Angel. Punisher's lesser-known form is meaner and deadlier than ever before. I'm Andrew Lapamardo, and this is Marvelous Videos. We know the Punisher as one of the deadliest vigilantes in the Marvel Universe, but little is known about his alternate avatar as Avenging Angel. This alternate avatar was introduced in 1988 when the Punisher comic series needed some rework, and the creators decided to go with a horror genre storyline to revamp his story arc. Created by Christopher Golden and Tom Sniegoski, the Punisher took a meaner and deadlier form as the Avenging Angel, an immortal being who was bestowed with superpowers from heaven. Let us explore this lesser-known form of the Punisher in detail, and have a look at the comic series that introduced the Avenging Angel. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Exploring the comic book story arc, featuring Avenging Angel. The Punisher's Avenging Angel avatar was explored in a comic arc in 1988. This comic, titled Punisher Purgatory, was the fourth volume of the Punisher comic series, and it consisted of 4 issues. The first issue in the series, titled The Harvest, started with a glimpse of a filthy alley in Brooklyn, the place where Frank Castle took his life. The alley soon became a shrine for the homeless and the poor, who visited the place, since they had nowhere else to go. One such person was Lucy Mellis, who often came to the site to pray for Frank. After his death, Frank was just regarded as a legendary urban boogeyman. The city was replete with crime, and there were instances of young kids living in fear of abusive stepfathers and criminals wandering the streets. One such evil business that had overtaken the city was that of death, as a group of men worked in a laboratory to manufacture death and sell it to kids. While everyone knew this business, the neighbors did not dare to raise any questions, and the police were also paid to remain silent. The men continued to sell death to young kids when the Punisher barges through the doors of their lab one fine day. His voice was lifeless and cold, and his eyes and forehead blazed with red light. He had the appearance of a dead man and even smelled of earth and smoke. The Punisher also carried strange weapons that were never seen before, and the men panicked and pulled out their guns as well. The Punisher kills the men one by one, and he himself feels strange sensations in his own body. As his bullets tear into the flesh of these men, the Punisher feels these men die in his own body, and he remembers what he is. He does not seem to remember much, except for a few things such as the punishment must fit the crime. He cannot recollect where he got the guns and weapons from, but he does remember that he has the equipment to start a fire. The Punisher sets the place ablaze, while one of the men manages to escape and beg the Punisher not to kill him. He begs that he has a family to care for and asks the Punisher to escape the place with him before it all burns down. The Punisher replies to him by throwing him off the building, and then he himself feels his surroundings changing from the building into a fiery pit. Frank Castle finds himself tumbling into hell, while firefighters rush to the scene and try to put out the fire. As the Punisher lies there, he gets flashes from a different life that seems like puzzles he needs to put together. He thinks of his life after returning from the war and remembers his happy days with his wife and children. He then recollects their murders and also remembers all the murders he committed in order to seek vengeance for them. He manages to put these fragments of life together, but still struggles to remember how exactly he died. The Punisher soon regains his sense of surroundings and walks out of the fire. At the Church of St. Tarcisius, the evil Oliver launches an attack on the angels Apherius and Teriel. Oliver used to be the prince of the archangels, but he had forsaken heaven to side with Lucifer and his counterparts in hell. Oliver had then become the lord of a realm in the netherworld. Oliver feeds on Apherius' spirit, and we later learn that he is doing so in order to become stronger and seek revenge on Lucifer, Satanish, Mephisto, and other such demons. After joining forces with Lucifer, Oliver was cast out of hell and sent to live a life trapped inside a human body. However, Oliver is now feeding on the spirits of angels to grow stronger and finally get his revenge. Meanwhile, Lucy Mellis returns home at night, and her husband Tony tries to hit her for coming so late. The Punisher intervenes and threatens Tony never to hit her again. Lucy asks Frank if this is really him, and we learn that they used to know each other from their childhood. Lucy was the younger sister of Frank's childhood friend, and he recollects these memories from the past. Frank later visits his shrine and wonders why he cannot remember his death. While Frank ponders over his life, he sees his family in the shadows and follows them in the streets. They tell him that there is something he needs to see, and they take him to a rooftop where Aphirus lies injured. The angel apologizes for luring Frank by using his family and tells him that he needs his help in getting rid of Oliver. Frank asks him who he is, and Aphirus tells him that he is a Gregorian angel who was sent to Earth to look over humans. Aphirus further tells Frank that Gadriel should have already told Frank about all these things and that they need to act fast. He further states that though Frank had died once already, he is at risk of dying again if Oliver isn't stopped. As Aphirus burns into flames and dies, he tells Frank to find Gadriel at the bar called Milton's, which will help him find some answers. Frank ends up visiting the bar 2 hours later and finds Gadriel drinking away at the bar counter. Gadriel seems very upset about the deaths of Tariel and Aspheres when Frank approaches him in haste. Frank immediately demands answers from Gadriel and even punches him in the mouth. The Punisher demands to know how he was dead and then alive, and Gadriel replies by revealing that it was him who brought Frank to life from hell to give him a chance at redemption. Frank asks him to elaborate, and Gadriel explains that he was supposed to be Frank's family's guardian angel and protect them. However, he was negligent in his role and failed to prevent the death of Frank's wife and children. Gadriel asks for forgiveness while Frank looks at him with anger in his eyes and removes his gun. As the segment comes to an end, Frank orders Gadriel to pray and then points his gun at him. The next issue, titled The Mark of Cain, begins with the crowd at Milton's running out of the place in a hurry. Though they had seen many strange things over the years, they had never witnessed anything like the Punisher's fury. Inside the bar, Frank holds Gadriel at gunpoint and is furious at the Angel for not keeping his family safe. He finally shoots his gun at Gadriel, but the Angel cannot be killed easily. Gadriel tells Frank that he could have died only if Frank truly wanted to kill him, and that these weapons respond to the one who wields them. Gadriel tells Frank that he used to be Heaven's weapons master before becoming a guardian angel, but he failed at all these jobs and is now looking for redemption. Gadriel then reveals his wings and tells Frank that he didn't give him access to these weapons so that he could kill the weapon master. Gadriel even asks Frank to give him a chance to explain why and how he brought Frank back to life. Gadriel tries to talk about Frank's mission, but Frank shoots at him and then walks away. He seems disinterested in the war between heaven and hell, and says that he has been a soldier for way too long. Frank believes that he has nothing left to fight for when Gadriel returns to life and insists that that is far from true. Gadriel then explains that he gave up a part of his angelic essence and his own soul to bring Frank back to life. He tells Frank to consider this purgatory since he cannot pass through the gates of heaven and reunite with his family without Gadriel's help. Gadriel further tells Frank that this war between heaven and hell is eternal and that it has already worsened if Oliver is already killing angels. In a different side of the city, Oliver resides in a flat in Manhattan when a stalker tries to get in touch with him. The intruder tells Oliver that the attack on Hellstorm is underway, and he even brings the head of the angel Hasava as a present to Oliver. Oliver feeds on the angel's head and gets even more potent. He experiences flashes of his human life as Frankie Costa, and he states that this body was just a shell for his real demonic self. In Brooklyn, Hellstorm struggles to fight off the demons when Gadriel appears at the scene and offers to help him. Though Hellstorm is a demon lord, he and Gadriel seem to be friends, and Gadriel tells him that Oliver seems to be preparing for an attack on the Nether Realms. Gadriel finds himself in a tough spot with one of the demons, but the Avenging Angel shows up at the scene in the nick of time. He fights the demons along with Hellstorm and Gadriel, and the three of them strike in unity by using powers from both heaven and hell. They get rid of the demons, and Darkstorm sets off to visit the Nether Realms before Oliver captures the place. While this situation de-escalates, Lucy Mellis has to take care of Tony, who is admitted to the hospital after Frank attacks him. While Tony complains about his injuries, Lucy is lost in thoughts about Frank, and she is grateful for his help in dealing with Tony. At Oliver's apartment in Manhattan, the demon tells Oliver about Frank Castle and how he helped Gadriel and Hellstorm. On the other side of the city, Frank pays a visit to Gadriel, who seems to have captured an unknown man. The man appears to have some critical information, but refuses to open up. Frank offers to talk to him instead of Gadriel, and the man greets Frank and tells him that he thought he was dead. Frank asks him if they know each other, and the man tells him that he should have a good look at the faces of his victims before killing them. Gadriel tells Frank that he does not need to listen to this, and he kills the man, who is then revealed to be a demon. As the issue comes to an end, Gadriel tells Frank that demons aren't capable of anything but lies, and Frank wonders if it's the same with angels as well. The third issue of the series was titled A Gathering of Angels, and it begins with Frank and Gadriel walking down the streets of New York. Gadriel tells him all about his life as an angel and all the mistakes he made in heaven before being sent to Earth as a guardian angel. Frank is quite bitter about Gadriel not performing his duties as a guardian angel too. Gadriel retaliates by saying that he brought Frank back to life and gave him a chance at redemption, and that this must at least account for something. Frank asks him about the demon that Gadriel killed earlier, and Gadriel tells him that he will soon find everything out. In the meantime, Gadriel takes him to a place where all the guardian angels known as Grigori have gathered together. He introduces Frank to Sariel, Azazel, Armoris, and Ezekiel, who are all worried about how to deal with Oliver. The Grigoris tell Frank that just in the past week, Oliver's stalkers have taken away 4 of the angels, and the heavens also refuse to help the Grigoris with this situation. They have all gathered to find a solution themselves, when a bunch of Oliver's stalkers break into the room and launch an attack on the Grigori. In the meantime, Oliver attacks the realm of Satanish and puts it under siege. Oliver's plan to conquer hell one realm at a time seems to finally be in motion. And he even has special programs to feed on the lords of these realms in order to get their powers and become even stronger. Back on Earth, Lucy visits the graveyard to have a look at Frank's grave. She places roses on the empty grave and says she needed to talk to him, but didn't know where else to go. Meanwhile, Frank and the Grigori fight off Oliver's stalkers, and one of them especially pursues Frank. This stalker has a past history with Frank and is quite agitated to know that Frank does not remember him. He manages to defeat Frank in battle and then tells him that he will soon remember him. The stalker almost kills Frank, but then leaves him alone because Lord Oliver wants him alive. As Frank falls to the ground, he once again has flashes of memories from the alley where he shot himself. He finally remembers his death and has a faint memory of being resurrected by Gadriel and getting some of his divine essence. After Gadriel brought Frank back to life, the Avenging Angel rose out of his grave and wandered the city. He then visited a place he knew from wartime, collecting a bunch of weapons, and stepped out on the street as the Punisher. Frank regains his consciousness and finds himself trapped in Oliver's apartment along with Gadriel. The two of them bicker when Oliver makes an entrance, and Frank immediately demands to know why Oliver wanted him alive. Oliver tells him that he only wanted to know how Frank returned back from the dead, and he approaches Frank closely. Oliver then realizes that Frank has the scent of an angel, and that he could be of some use. Frank then asks Oliver who he really is, and Oliver replies by morphing his Frank into that of Frank Costa's. Frank Costa was the man responsible for killing Frank Castle, aka the Punisher's family. Frank looks at Oliver with a bewildered look as the demon admits to having killed his family. As this issue comes to an end, Oliver even says that in a way, he is even responsible for creating the Punisher. The final issue of the Avenging Angel arc was titled The Hour of Judgment, and it started with a flashback to Frank's life with his family. He was out on a picnic with his wife and children when they accidentally witnessed a mafia shootout. The mob spotted Frank's family hiding behind the bushes and killed his wife and children while Frank managed to escape. Frank's family had died before his eyes, and that is what caused him to turn into the Punisher and seek vengeance. Oliver reveals that after being outcast by the fallen angels and demons of hell, he sought to have a weapon that would kill for him. He was sent to Earth in the body of a stillborn baby with no memories from hell, but he was luckily born into a mob family. Since he grew up around blood and killings, his memories from hell returned to him very soon, and he bid his time while being trapped in a human body. He then carefully devised an entire plan to kill Frank's family to complete a ritual, by means of which the Punisher was created. Oliver then used the Punisher as his weapon and an engine that would provide him with death and sacrifice. Frank tells Oliver that he never killed for him. Instead, he always killed for his family. Oliver retaliates by asking Frank about the face on his chest and points out that Frank has always been killing for him. Moreover, the Punisher had killed Frank Costa to avenge his family. In doing so, the Punisher sent Oliver back to hell after killing his human form. After this, every time the Punisher killed a human, it unknowingly gave more power to Oliver, as all the dead men were sent to Oliver's hell. Oliver then created an army of stalkers out of these dead men, and his powers kept increasing. He became strong enough to start a war in hell, and even assumed a physical form. Oliver takes a break from addressing Frank, and then turns his attention to Gadriel. He asked Gadriel where he was the day Frank Castle's family was murdered, and revealed that Gadriel was hanging out with women and neglecting his duties. Frank is furious over the fact that his family would be alive if not for Gadriel's negligence, but the angel asks Frank for forgiveness and tells him that this is the only way he can ever get back into heaven. Oliver tries to entice Frank into fighting Gadriel and asks him if he hates heaven more or hell. Frank replies by saying that it does not matter and that both heaven and hell have used him. He refuses to be a pawn in this game any longer and breaks free from the trap. Frank then pulls out his heavenly weapon and declares that he will kill Oliver. Oliver orders his stalkers to kill Frank, and these stalkers surround Frank. One by one, they tell him how he killed them all and sent them to hell as the Punisher. He had shot one of these stalkers and left them to bleed, while he cut another one's throat and left his corpse to be discovered by his daughter. Finally, one of the stalkers wields a weapon from hell and tells Frank that this fight has to end now, finally. Frank's weapon from heaven and the demon's weapon from hell makes a clashing noise, like that of Armageddon, and their clash causes a tiny hole to break wide open. Oliver created this hole in his apartment to have some access to hell, and it breaks wide open, thereby forming a massive hole to hell right in the middle of the room. Oliver and Gadriel had been fighting each other, and Oliver drags Gadriel through this door to hell. Frank follows the two of them, and Oliver tells him to give up since this is his dimension, and Frank cannot harm him here. However, Oliver does not notice a strange creature creeping up from behind, and this creature tears Oliver's entire body apart while the fallen angel boasts about being the master of this realm. Frank then uses his weapon from heaven to shoot at this creature and saves Gadriel from this realm. Gadriel finally declares that it's time he started acting like an angel, releasing what little was left of his angelic essence in an explosion. As the angel disappears, Frank sits by himself and quietly forgives Gadriel. He then makes a striking return as the Punisher and goes back to becoming the legend we know as the Urban Boogeyman. As the comic issue comes to an end, the Punisher becomes a demon for some while acting as an angel for others. While it has been about vengeance all this time, the Punisher now works for redemption. What makes Avenging Angel a unique form of Punisher? As the Avenging Angel, Frank Castle was handed special weapons with mystical powers. These weapons were unlike any other guns or machines wielded on Earth, and they had the ability to even kill divine beings. Moreover, these weapons worked according to the will of the owner, and Frank could only kill anyone with these weapons if he truly wanted them dead. The angel, Gadriel, who resurrected Frank, was also the same angel who had created these weapons. Moreover, Gadriel had given up a large part of his own angelic essence in order to bring Frank to life. And this essence gave Frank many divine powers, besides those as the Punisher. These supernatural powers that enhanced Frank's fighting ability were later taken away when he was no longer the Avenging Angel, making them unique to just one of his personas. Conclusion: The Avenging Angel was a notable story arc for the Punisher and made an exciting comic storyline. The horror concept was indeed well planned, but it certainly had the potential to become something bigger. Though this arc lasted only 4 issues, the Avenging Angel persona of the Punisher was quite a breath of fresh air and is most definitely an intriguing read. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.